can't do this Friday just yet. I did let you know 2 weeks ago.
Did you?
A 7-point gap splits the top 3 teams as we head into the penultimate round of the championship here at the Hungaroring. Hello everybody and welcome back to the RCI Wednesday Team Championship. My name is Tim Peck, joined today in the booth by Austin Devonshire, and we have Cormac behind the cameras. Welcome in everybody.
So thank you for having us. Obviously Wednesday, a bit different to our usual Friday domain, but I mean a nighttime Hungaroring. So 30 minutes of qualifying session just started, so it's going to be exciting. It's going to be exciting.
Absolutely. Don't let your eyes and ears deceive you. This is not a Friday broadcast. This is actually the Wednesday Championship that we are streaming today after the Friday broadcast last week. Jesse Lees approached me and Austin and said, look you guys, we've got a really exciting championship on our hands over on Wednesday. With 2 races for us. We'd be very grateful. So we are bringing you the final 2 races of the Wednesday Champ. We'll be here this week on Hungaroring, round 5 of the championship. And then next week, for the final round, we'll be heading all the way over to Spa, where the team is battling out at the top. Of course, I mentioned already, Austin, some very close battles up and down the field. The top 3 teams currently separated by 7 points, so it's looking like it's going to be some very exciting racing. I was talking to a couple of different drivers on the different teams before we got started today. All of them think we're going to be going into the final round at Spa with some very tight battles. No idea who's going to come out on top.
I mean, it's a finale to look forward to, but for now we've got Hungaroring, and it's one of those tracks where I feel like, as a driver, I mean, I don't really personally enjoy it, but when it comes to racing, it always produces some really good results. I mean, certain sections, it's really easy to kind of follow the cars in. We've seen it in real life. I mean, look at Formula 1, where there's really not any real racing, but you've seen battles between Hamilton and Alonso, even recently. So in GTs, we're going to be able to follow a whole lot closer in these classes of cars. So it's gonna result in some really close racing.
Absolutely, and I agree with you on this one. Not one of my favourite tracks to drive personally. However, it has actually grown on me a lot more recently. Watching a lot of the races that we've had here, it always generates some exciting action here on the track. And with that qualifying underway, 15 minutes of qualifying for drivers to set the fastest time possible. Benjamin Harmon currently putting it on a provisional pole, a 1:44.415 for the Iron Lynx team. John Daly slotting in just a 10th behind in the 197, and Bugzek in number 64, 2 tenths off the pace. And 15 minutes of qualifying also, it feels like a long time to get in the good lap that you want, but once you get down into it, it actually goes by quite quickly, and you find yourself running out of laps very quick in the qualifying session.
Yeah, like 15 minutes really isn't a lot. You want to factor in kind of getting the setup going. Once you get your banking map in, and it's not the longest track in the world. It's not the shortest, but it's not the longest track in the world. So traffic is still a bit of an issue around here. If you get caught up in someone's dirty air, especially the second sector, that's kind of that lap road. You either have to overtake or fall back and give yourself the space. If you fall back, you're falling back. Take the number 64 right now in the on the track map, if they fall back, they're falling into the 747, the 30, the 197. So it's really difficult to get a clean run around here.
It absolutely is, and with 10 minutes already left to go, things are going to be picking up fairly quickly. Sebastian Morgan crosses the line. That's enough to put them up into P3, about a 10th and 800ths off the pace of Benjamin Harmon right now. The 796 continuing to hold on to that provisional pole time. We've got a couple more cars left to cross the line set at lap time yet. You've got about, what's that, 8 cars at the bottom that haven't set a time, and then all the way down the field you can see Vanbrugh now just putting it in at the top of 1:43.562. There's a new time to beat with Verstappen crossing the line, just 9 tenths off the pace. John Daly upgrading their time as well, 6 tenths off, puts himself back up into third as well. So, you know, we're going to see cars pick up the pace a little bit as the qualifying session goes on, Austin. It's often that we see within the first couple of laps, it's more of a time to set a banker lap for these cars so that they don't start right at the back of the field and they have something to fall back on if they keep invalidating their laps. And as the qualifying continues, that's when you see drivers really pushing the car to the limits, exploring where they can find extra time on the track. That's when you start to see those lap times dramatically drop to the point where it seems always alien some of the times you get out in the qualifying.
That's it. And one thing I'm noticing, Tim, is that this track seems to really kind of be polarizing certain drivers. I mean, Jordan Daly just seems like he's got a taste of winning from last Friday, and seems like he's just trying to put he's parking the car up on the podium. Christopher Verstappen is usually a name that you see. We say it quite often already, but Verstappen's one of those names you see kind of at the top a lot of the time, but down there in 5th place, a second off the leader. Doesn't feel reflective of that kind of pace, but yeah, no, this track seems really polarizing.
It absolutely is, and the other thing to remember with a championship like this is, of course, each championship, so they may not all have the fastest drivers in the car right now, or they may have the fastest driver in the car as well. It's all about working together as a team. Of course, not every single car right now does have 2 drivers. Some of these guys have had the option to just drive the race solo. The race being 80 minutes long, perfectly reasonable to handle it yourself. But of course you can split it into 2 40-minute segments if you wish to race it with a teammate. So it's a mixed field at the moment. Some teams have 1 driver, some teams have 2, and it doesn't matter either way how many drivers you have. The only thing is if you have 2 drivers, when you come into the pits you have to swap your driver. Of course, if there's only one of you, you don't have to swap the driver. That is, I believe, the only pit stop requirement that I've heard of anyway in this race. But 15 minutes of qualifying into an 80-minute race, Austin. It's a bit longer of a race than we're used to seeing here at RCI. Of course, most races lasting about an hour, or maybe a little bit longer, but only by about 10 minutes. But 80-minute race is going to bring you plenty of action, especially if halfway through you're changing up drivers. In a way that almost completely changes the race that you're watching.
Yeah, like strategies change up massively because, I mean, you can make tyres last an hour, you can make tyres last 2 hours, but you've got more to play with there. If you change your tyres, you've got more time in the race to kind of make that time up, whether the fresh tyres could be the quicker option, or, if you're staying on the same tyres, do they just drop off by, by the 70, 80th minute mark? So I think we're going to see a lot of interesting strategies coming into this. I
absolutely agree with you there. Of course, a big warm welcome to all of you who are joining us at home in the chat today. We've seen a couple of your messages coming in as the stream was starting up. Messages from Ash Bibby, Tom Watts, Carlos Classiod, Kevin Boss and Michael Redford, both of whom are racing in separate cars today. We also see Linus Dellenbach and Jay Bubbins all saying hello in the chat. Hello to all of you as well. Thank you for the ongoing support you provide us here at RCI. We hope you enjoy today's race. Well, Julian Vanbrugh, who's currently sitting on a provisional pole, about to cross the line now, on their time. It wasn't quite. No, they were doing another out lap there, Austin, or at least a slow lap just to get back into the pace of things. But now, you've got number 87, Julian Vanbrugh, lining up on a provisional pole, 1:43.562, Austin. Like a fairly good time right now. Benjamin Harmon only 2 tenths off, but the rest of the field is more than half a second back. It looks like Vanbrugh, the time that holds steady here.
Yeah, it's a quarter of a second. There's only 5 minutes of the session remaining. So yeah, that's looking more and more comfortable. I mean, by no means are we saying it's a set in stone. This is still very much provisional, but I mean that clock is ticking down, and you know the likes of Hellman, Daly, you know Verstappen, Buksek, we've seen polling results as well. Yeah, no, the clock's ticking down. You know, and the time to the time to just kind of knock Van off that top spot is fading away.
Absolutely. Now let's talk track limits at the Hungaroring. It's something that plays a huge factor in most qualifying sessions, and there's some tracks where it plays a lot bigger of a factor than others. I'm thinking Paul Ricard, where track limits is something we really watch to see. As drivers often invalidate their laps. Hungaroring is, I would say it's a weird one, but to be honest, it's really not very easy to invalidate your lap time around here. You've got the bus stop chicane in the second sector as well, which can be quite tough to hit properly, and that can easily invalidate your lap as well as a lot of corners where you just want to swing out quite wide. There's also that far section just coming out the first sector as well, which again is like a chicane, where it's very easy to run yourself a little bit too wide off the track and invalidate your time. So you know, these drivers are going to have to be looking out to make sure that they don't accidentally validate a lap here. It might be why we see a lot of these times not improving across the board and actually getting a little bit slower. It could just be also that people struggling to nail those corners as they're trying to find the speed they want to, they end up accidentally validating their lap. It's something quite common at the Hungaroring.
Yeah, it's one of those tracks, isn't it? It's definitely a racer's track and not a hot lap track. It's, if that makes any sense at all. Like some tracks, I think, lend themselves to a single lap pace, you know, when you're the only car out on track. But as soon as you kind of have people to run with, you got pace differentials, pace differences. You know, if you're quicker or slower than the car in front or behind you, that's going to slow both of you up. And again, when half the field is in a way kind of impeding itself, that's really good news for Vanbrugh right now.
It absolutely is, and as we transform into the race, drivers will want to be just looking at cleaning up some of those laps as well if they are invalidating them, making sure that they don't keep cutting the track, because of course you get free track warnings after that. Yourself up a drive-through penalty courtesy of the game. It's the only other penalty that you can get in today's race live will be a stop and go, and that's for speeding in the pit lane. This event is not live stewarded. All incidents will have to be reported by the teams that are involved in them and will be looked at afterwards by the stewards, and then penalties will be given out post-race. So that can shake up the standings in itself. It can cause some debates in the next race too. But one thing you do know is if you see a penalty today, it is going to be gifted most likely for track limits. And like I said, very easy to do that here at the Hungaroring. Verstappen now approaching the line. It's a driver that we said we expect to see much further up the field in this qualifying session. But as they cross the line here, you're going to notice that the car wildly off the pace that they want to be. So 146.1 isn't quite going to cut it for Christopher Verstappen. Also, they've got to find this time somewhere, right? Like, we know they have it, and it's the same for a lot of these teams out there right now. You know, we know they have the time to find. They just got to hook up that perfect lap.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, Verstappen's one of the names that stands out because they are a multiple series champion. Like, make no mistake, they have pace. So to see them, like, kind of, I don't want to say drowning, but like, kind of floating around at the bottom of the top 10, it's a strange feeling besides being sat here in the box. It's kind of like seeing Max Verstappen try to fight with the two, try to fight for points. You know, it's it doesn't quite compute. So no, I do wonder if there's something up with that. But at the same time, again, it goes to show polarizing. This is Daly dropped down to P5 now. Rambach taking that position for P3. Benjamin Hellman still holding up P2. But Vanbrug's gone even quicker, almost half a second now ahead of Stewart.
Yeah, Vanbrugh has a time there that is really standing the test of qualifying. Still the provisional pole time to beat. More cars still crossing the line, trying to improve on their lap times. But another car not quite able to find the time around the track. Same with Shipston there, who's just a couple of attempts off their time. Richard Phillips parked up at the side of the track. Them and the 212 will be returning to the pit lane, so that is their qualifying session over, as there's only 30 seconds left to go. Once that time hits zero, any cars crossing the line, that is the end of their qualifying session. All these cars coming around the last couple of corners now, We'll get one more lap Austin to just really improve their time. And there we go for Streppen, able to improve their lap time. Puts himself up into 5th. Still though, 6/10 of Vanbra's time. Looks like there's still time there for Verstappen to find if they can. And you've got Buchek now crossing the line. Ram Racing. That's enough to put them up into 2nd place. If they cross the line there with enough time to do another lap, Austin, I think they just about made it in the 64.
Yep. The only car that's finished so far is car number 8. That's Ted Edwards. I believe that's the Race Ventura team. But yeah, no. Looking at things at the moment, look at my deltas. Verstappen is up on their time, as is Haleman currently. Daly's dropped off, so I'd imagine that's an abandonment for that final lap. But P6 provisionally. Verstappen, I just saw, was 2/10 up on themselves, and yeah, no, it's looking like there might be some shifts up at the top.
Well, with that, Benjamin Harmon putting the car up into 2nd place. 796 now sits provisionally in there. Ramback able to promote themselves into P4 there. And Verstappen still yet to cross the line, or will be doing so in a second in the Team WRT. Shipston improving their lap time. They've put themselves up into a provisional 6th for now, as our pole position sitter Vanbrugh coming down the start-finish straight. They'll be crossing the line. Has been an improvement on their time. It's not. It's still a 1:43.385 here to beat, as Christopher Streppen, one of the drivers we're looking at here to improve on their lap time. Currently Austin not up on their delta, although they have just changed that in the final corner. But with it, it looks like they've validated their lap anyway. Has since returned to the pits. Don't want to continue with that lap, so won't be able to get themselves on pole there. The only person left on the track, Sebastian Morgan, about to cross the line. Has it been an improvement for them? It has, enough to put them up into 4th place as well. A huge jump there for the 175. And there you have it, everybody. Those are your qualifying standings for today's race. Vanbrugh and Hobson will be on pole in the number 87 McLaren, setting all the fastest sectors and the fastest lap time of a 1:43.385. Benjamin Harmon starts 2nd, with Buchek behind them in 3rd. Morgan Schaffner will be in the 175 in 4th. Ramback and Stephen Quee will be in the 701. They're starting 5th. Verstappen in 6th. Shipston 7th. Jordan Daly in 8th. Kulisek and a Racer starting 9th. And then your top 10 is Filipiak in the 420, alongside their teammate Austri Charles as well. So, you know, that's a pretty tight top 10. It's all within a second of each other, so we're expecting to see some tight battles across the field, Austin. But for now, let's have a little look at what the championship standings are going to be looking like going into today's race. We have already told you guys that it's very, very tight at the top of the field, and well, this is what it looks like right now. The RCI Esports yellow car, the 796, which is starting in 2nd place today with 117 points, is in 1st place. The MRT KTM, the number 64, with 112 points, is in 2nd. Just 2 points behind them is the RCI Esports Blue, the 747 of Christopher Streppen, starting 6th place today, rounds out your top 3 in the championship. Then there's a bit of a points jump down the order. Kaiju Racing with 69 points, just 1 point ahead though of Powered by Esport. Those teams 4th and 5th. Ground Zero Racing and Rebound Racing are tied 6th with 66 points. And then 699 Racing is in 8th place with 60 points. Green and Low Fast Engineering has 46 points in 9th place. And then Racing 25 Years will round out your top 10 with 29 points.
So coming into the next 10 as well, in P11 you've got the RPMS SimSport 222 guys with 29 points. P12 you got Wheelie Slow Racing Team with 26 points. Also 26 points you've got the 420 car, that is P13 of Simulation Esports. P14 NSR MYK Racing in the other NSX Evo with 23. I'm going back, am I? 23 points. No, I'm getting confused because it's 26 points and 23 points tied. Also with 23 points, you got the 15th place of Kaiju Racing, 16th place Race Ventura, 22 points. BGG Sim Racing with 20 points in 17th place. 18th place is Rebound Racing with 14 points. 19th place is Club Formula Spain with 13, and also with 13 in 20th place, you got BDG Sim Racing.
And of course, the teams currently sitting just outside the top 20. You have Just Gamers and the LPR Lotus Pass Racing tied for 21st on 5 points. And then the Phoenix, Spain without the A, and X4 Motorsport, SBR, RXK, sorry. They're all tied with 0 points, but still in the championship. Everyone else with a hyphen next to their name have since signed out and will no longer be participating for points in this championship. So that is what the standings are looking like going into the penultimate round of the season. And looking at the top, Austin, like Jesse mentioned to us last week, some very, very close battles. The top three, of course, split up by just 7 points, and then the positions from 4th to 8th split up by 9 points. Of course, you've got 4th with 69, and then 5th place has 68 points, as well as the 6th is tied for 66. So some very close battles across the field. And a lot of these races have really been going any way. It's been very unpredictable who's taken home which race. Of course, RCI Sports Blue, the 747 Christopher Sheppen, took home the win in Suzuka, the first round of the championship. And then Benjamin Harmon behind the 796 took home a double win in a row. We went to Laguna Seca, followed by Silverstone for rounds 2 and 3. And then the MRT KTM team, the number 64, won last week out at Bathurst. So really, this can go any way, Austin. And as we're going into the race today at Hungaroring, again, it looks like a new driver could potentially be taking the win today. The number 87, currently lining up on pole. What can they do from that first place start?
I mean, it's gonna be a fun one to kind of get going with. As I say, Hungaroring always hosts really great racing, and well, as much as it not be as much fun to race, it's gonna be fun for us here up in the box.
It absolutely is, and you can see the cars now sitting on the grid, ready to get going, ready to start their out lap. We're going to have a quick look at some of these liveries. A lot of them are made specially for this championship. You can see the Spain without the A car, the spin lining up on the pole position. That is, of course, Vanbrugh, who took home the pole today, and then Benjamin Harmon in the green just to the side of them. A couple more cars coming across your screen right now. The 701, the BioCircle team, looking very hot in the yellow livery there. Of course, Christopher Sheppen in the heart of racing. RCI Esports blue car there. It's a very pretty livery to look out for as well as we continue down the field. A lot of liveries in today's race, Austin, that makes the cars very easy to spot. But there's a couple of them that are actually quite new faces here in the RCI Championship, of course. We do see them from time to time joining in with some of the champs, and especially in some of the different days, as we're, of course, only used to the Friday Championship. But there are a couple of new liveries that I've not really seen before. I do always look forward to seeing a good new livery.
Yeah, that's the one thing I've really been kind of really been digging since I remember when we changed the rules and we started allowing these custom liveries. And it's really good just seeing kind of the creativity of the community in a way, because again, this is a community kind of thing, you know. It's like we see the sort of same names kind of come up between championships, and it's really fun seeing what people kind of come up with.
It absolutely is, of course. Sitting there in 19th place, you can see Pietro Demonicus in the number 31. That is the Wheelie Slow Racing team, which some fans might recognise the livery on that car. However, you're probably used to seeing it on a Lamborghini, although they've chosen to take the Honda in this championship. Of course, Dominicus came into the chat earlier saying that they're not going to touch the Honda ever again after Spa. That is Noosa. For those of you that don't know, Dominicus, Noosa, same person. Michael Redford also lining up on the back row again in a Honda as well. It doesn't feel like they've got a lot of pace around Hungaroring either. So maybe the Honda wasn't the choice of car today, Austin. However, I can tell you the choice of car may have been the McLaren out on track. We've been looking at the statistics for the Hungaroring, seeing which car is able to take it the fastest and which cars have the fastest times. And currently it's the McLaren 720S that holds the fastest lap here at the Hungaroring, a lap time of a 1:41.537. And it was set by Luke Whitehead on the 10th of June. So, you know, the McLaren today, it looks like the car to beat. And who's lining up in the McLaren? Why, none other than the number 87, Julian Vanbrugh, right at the front of the field. So this looked like a very good race for the Spain without the 80.
It could well be. I mean, go back to the point in the McLaren. Like, it's good seeing it back at the top, and it goes to show how the meta on this game does change. I mean, I know there's new updates that come out, you know, physics changes, some cars get hit harder than others. But I remember 2 years ago when the Bentley and the McLaren were the cars to be in, and then ever since that kind of changed, the McLaren was kind of languishing at the bottom of the field a little bit. You didn't really see, you know, there wasn't really too much of an uptake in it being used in these kinds of races. But I mean, maybe this is the sign of something. Maybe this is the sign of, like, maybe it's a better car than a lot of people have let on. So we'll have to see.
One thing I do know about the McLaren, Austin, is that it's been said that the McLaren is good at a lot of things. It's not got a particular area that excels at, other than the fact that the tyres on the McLaren last that little bit longer than the tyres on every other car, and that might be something that comes into a factor in today's race. If teams want to choose to go that way, it could be a strategy here that you don't pit for a fresh set of tyres. You can save yourself some time in the pit stop, and the McLaren should be one of the cars that is able to last the entire 80 minutes. Of course, not a strategy we will see today. I imagine most teams will just opt into a fresh set of tyres because it can make a tremendous difference to your lap times. And of course, with an 80-minute race as well, you will have to put in some fuel as well to refuel the car, so you won't be adding too much time on the pit stop either, especially those with a driver swap. That's going to take the best part of 30 seconds anyway. You may as well put on a fresh set of tyres as well. But you know, for those McLaren teams that are just a solo driver, maybe they will look at taking the same tyres throughout to save time in the pits. You can only wait and see, as we have now started the out lap. You can see the cars all lining up behind Vanbrugh now as they navigate their way through sector 2. And something we don't see a lot of the time, Austin, over at Friday Series, that I think again is going to play a huge factor in tonight's race. It's currently 10 PM and only getting darker from here. Visibility may be quite poor in today's race.
It might quite just be. I mean, that tends to be a side effect of what happens at night there, Tim. But it tends to be that the sun goes away and things get a bit... I don't know if you've noticed, but it happened. It does happen. It does happen at least once a day. But I know what you mean, Tim. I know exactly what you mean, and no, it's gonna be it's definitely gonna shake things up, because again, like, it's quite a claustrophobic circuit at times. So it's going to be it's not going to lend itself well to nighttime, especially when there's no kind of outer track lighting as well, like you have, say, at Spa, or at least in parts at Spa.
Absolutely, you have seen a couple of driver changes already, as the driver did qualifying, some of which have been swapped out, and the new driver put into the track for the first stint as well. So do keep your eyes on a lot of these teams as they fight through the field, most notably the 796 starting in P2, as they're currently sitting first in the championship. And you've also got the 747 as well, who are sitting third as they are starting in 6th today. But cars approaching the line of the run down to turn 1. It's going to be a very long one here at the Hungaroring, and crossing the line now. Never mind, I always do this. It's the second line where the cars actually get off on this track, and with it, the number 87 McLaren, they are just pulling into the lead straight away, absolutely under no pressure at all. As Buchek on the Mercedes goes towards the inside of Benjamin Harman here, going through turn 1, a little bit of a bump between second and third place, and with it, Buchek here still alongside the Lamborghini as they run down now towards turn 3 for the left hand. Harman go very deep into the corner. Will Buchek look for a switch back here? No, they won't. Instead, S. Morgan gonna come through in the Ferrari. That puts them up into third place as someone goes off the side there. I believe again that's the Mercedes rejoin the track, though very, very dangerously. Does able to hold it together, as it looks like the winner for turn 1, Austin. Morgan gaining a position, that Ferrari just able to continuously put up the pressure. He climbs the position because of it.
No, that's just it. And no, again, it's just a bit of a smooth. Seems like a fairly smooth start. But yeah, no, again, still kind of clustered together, and still, you know, opening stages of the race. I mean, anything can still happen.
Absolutely anything can happen at this point in time. Rambach is currently driving the Iron Lynx car, the 701. They find themselves in 6th place, just behind Christopher Sheppen, who has since gained a position in the 747. The Aston Martin looking like a fairly all-rounder car here today. Not great at anything, but not bad at anything either. So do keep your eyes on the RCI Esports blue car there. Of course, it's called the Heart Racing in today's race. It's just a bit of a mismatch between the team names and the livery names as well. Buchek, who you originally saw trying to fight their way into second place on the first corner, has since fallen the position all the way down to P4. They went from third to fourth after finding themselves stranded on the outside of turn 3. Morgan capitalising off that, able to just slip themselves up inside here. Of course, they have since fallen a second and 4 seconds off the pace of the back of the Lamborghini. Benjamin Harmon still in second place, trying to keep the gap close to Van Brugge ahead. Christoph Verstappen though on the defensive game against Rambach, they're starting a little bit of a train behind them. You can see cars going all the way down to the bottom of the leaderboard there, all within a second of each other. Ted Edwards breaking the gap up. They find themselves second back in P60, but Verstappen now under pressure from Rambach, looking towards the inside. Then we'll duck out just before we get to the chicane. A safe call from the Lamborghini driver to prevent any incidents. John Day though now puts the pressure on Rambach there, trying to find their way up into P6. Neck and neck with each other go the Lambo and the Mercedes. John Day tucking back for now as Rambach comes out on top, manages to hold on to 6th place.
Still, this is what it's like at the start of the race though. You get all this kind of squabbling, everyone's still bunched together. You know, we're about 2 laps in now. And again, looking at the track map, it's still really, really clustered up. Jordan Daly still chasing the back of Rambach. Rambach hasn't, you know, has got the head, but not out of the woods yet. Daly trying to line up a later apex, doesn't quite work. Rambach going wide, but yeah, it's not going to be. You're not going to be close enough to make a move coming into the final corner, but might have the opportunity to set something up going down into the first. Looking down the order, looks like things are starting to spread out a little bit, but on the back of Rambach now, just again, you just sort of see the pace of the Mercedes going through onto the inside, thinks better of it, tucks back into the braking zone, and not really a whole lot of drama.
Of course, you're still watching from the rear of Rambach. We know that at one point in time they were putting the pressure on Verstappen ahead of them. But after trying to go through the chicane a bit too close to the rear of the Aston Martin, has fallen back into the clutches of John Daly, now playing the defensive game, unable to find the pace that they had in the first lap here at the Hungaroring. Christopher Verstappen, no, with that extra freedom, has closed the gap to Buchek ahead in for Mercedes. A way through as they continue into sector 2, going towards bus stop chicane. It is a place, Austin, where you don't see many overtakes happen because of the tight natures of the corner. Very, very difficult to go too wide. However, I can say that in my lifetime, I have seen 4 battles there, all of which have actually turned out safely, which is weird because every time I see 2 cars going into that corner neck and neck, it makes me very nervous. But, you know, it can be a popular overtaking spot if you're daring to do so. You know, if the driver ahead of you makes a mistake and you can get alongside them, keep that pressure up through the bus stop chicane, it can be a great place to really force them onto the brakes and just take that position mostly by force there. So we may see a couple of racing like that today. Do keep your eyes peeled. Sebastian Morgan currently sitting on that final spot in the podium, 3 overall. Just trying to hold off Buchek and Verstappen for now. What they want to happen really is they want Buchek and Verstappen to battle it out, and that means that they don't have to worry too much about the pressure from behind.
No, that's really going to help them out a lot, and yeah, you sort of see again just the cluster of 3 cars go down into turn 1. Was trying to get very close to the back of Buchek there. Buchek still trying to chase down Morgan as well in that Ferrari, and I mean Hellman is gaining a bit of time as well. I mean, looking at the delta there, that is a 3.1 second gap. There's a 3.1 second gap to Morgan. So I mean, you've kind of forming the raw little bubble here.
They have formed their own little bubble up at the front of the field. Benjamin Holman still putting pressure on the number 87, the Spain without the A car that did line itself up on pole. Van Brugge in the McLaren today looking to have a very good race, as long as they do it without doing a Spain without the A, which for those of you that haven't quite worked it out yet at home, does spell out spin. So the McLaren today, Van Brugge, currently looking in a very good position, held onto the lead for the first couple of laps, has since held off Benjamin Harmon as well. And do remember, the 796 is your championship leader at the moment. For those of you wondering where the number 87 is placed, well, they're currently sitting right at the bottom of the championship, They didn't participate in the first 4 races of the season. They were a mid-season sign-up. So what their goal is today is just to stir things up a bit, Austin. They want to show what they're worth, and they can come back next season fighting for some points and to potentially take the championship with them as well. But the goal for today for Vanbrugh is show everyone what you're made of, and show everyone why you should be at the top of the field.
That's it. I mean, what a statement to make, though, right? You're just kind of coming in, getting pole position, and then kind of leading the race in this kind of way right now. I mean, I know we're only, what, we're not even 10 minutes into the race yet, but at the same time, they're holding on to P1. They are still half a second ahead of Stu. You saw ahead of Hellman. You saw Hellman just having a little bit of a go into T1 there, but kind of overshot a little bit, but has recovered, sticking to the back. But the question is how is Vanbrugh in a race scenario? I mean, they've proven that they're quick, but being quick is one thing, but having the racecraft is another. So maybe there's a bit more to prove here.
Taking a step aside from the racing just for a second, and I know I was already talking about the livery on the Spain without the A car. I've just noticed that if you look at their logo, it is the word Spain, and then they've got the little squiggle. If we go to a rear wing view here, you'll see exactly what I mean. Is it's across the rear wing, and there you go. You've got the little squiggle that signifies a spin in the shape of an A as well. Austin, I love that on the livery of the car. I think it's a really clever logo. And I know it's probably not the thing to be focusing on right now in the middle of the race, but I think that again just shows some of the creativity we get here in the liveries at RCI.
I'm not gonna lie, the squiggle reminds me of, do you remember the old Windows screensaver where it had all the pipes? It reminds me of that. It's definitely creative. And again, with the custom liveries, it means we get to see all this, and we get to kind of show we get to show you guys all this creativity. And Jordan Daly going for a bit of a spin there. So speaking of spinning,
oh no!
Oh, that was the 420. So that's another McLaren. That's a huge hit.
That is a massive collision there.
Is that more cars collected as well? There's another spin from Daly.
I think so. I think there was a couple of cars. I say a couple. I think it was more than a couple collected up in that instant there. Jordan Daly returning to the pit lane. Is that because they've got damage and just isn't feasible to drag all the way back around the track? I think it might be. They might still come out the pits yet. Ramback returns to the pits. There's a Filipiak in last place as well. Dorber also coming into the pits as well. And that's going to promote those teams that were fighting at the bottom up a couple of positions. And we have had a couple of sign-outs already in this race. I see only one Honda left. Oh no, I don't. There's the other Honda, the 198. It's up in P11 for Redford as well. So although they were in the chat saying they weren't pretty confident in the pace of that Honda today, they haven't been able to capitalise since Austin. But you know, a huge spin there for Daly. Unable to really recover in a safe way. I mean, they got stranded right in the middle of the track. You saw them trying to roll back off the track quickly there, but didn't quite able to do so without catching a couple more cars in the process. You know, that's really split up the field quite a lot. If you look at the track map on the right hand side of your screen now, I mean, if you looked at that 2 minutes ago, that was a whole train of cars basically split up by not much more than 1 second. Now you're getting quite a lot of little clumps of cars throughout the field just from where that instant has split the field up a little bit. What that does mean though is for Verstappen in P5, they're now able to put the pressure on Morgan without the constant fear of Ramback and John Daly from behind.
Yeah, no, that's a weight off the shoulders in a way, just due to the misfortune of Daly. But no, that's, I mean, even in the midfield, that's going to switch things up not just a little bit, but a fair amount as well. I mean, when you count 4, maybe 5 cars involved, it's only a 19 car grid, so that's like nearly a quarter of the field that got caught up in that.
Yeah, that is a huge amount of cars getting caught up in that instant there. We've got another race replay coming to you. This time Ted Edwards in the spotlight. This is from the tail end of that instant, and you can see cars still stationary on the track either side. It means that there's only one line for the cars to go through, and even that was very, very tight. When you're going as fast as the cars that are out of the track are going right now, very hard to dodge what is happening. So you saw there Ted Edwards and R. Phillips picking up a little bit of damage on their way through as well. Of course, not as bad as the 4 that have had to pit so far, Austin, but still that is a fair amount of damage on the car. and that is going to affect your lap pace overall. It's just going to slow those cars down a little bit further as well. So, you know, it's not just the initial 4 cars that we saw getting completely stopped there in the spin. It's the tail end of it as well, where more cars continuously getting held up and even picking up a bit of damage. That is a huge incident. As you said, it's probably caused damage to about a quarter of the field, if not more.
Yeah, I mean that creates traffic for the leaders as well when they kind of catch up. It makes your race so much harder when you're trying to limp, you know, that car around. And you have a choice: do you take the damages in the bits, or do you try and limp it? And that's one of the back markers. I think it's one of the Audis. That's an Audi that's getting out of the way of the 2 leaders here. But the main fight on track does seem to be between Harman and Vanbrugh. I mean, Vanbraugh's got the pace to kind of keep up, but Stewie's not letting it go easy.
Nah, Benjamin Harman not going to let it go easy, absolutely, of course. Benjamin Harman is RCI's very own Stewie. They're currently racing out on track today. We do have a couple more of your favourite RCI staff out on the track today as well. Ted Edwards on the field, as well as Kevin Boss currently driving the number 15 as well. And you'll see a couple more of the RCI staff throughout the race too are competing in today's championship. You've got Sebastian Morgan, was able to hold on to the podium for the first few laps of this race. This has been overtaken by Buchek in the number 64 and is now on the defence against Verstappen and Shipston, who you can see from their rear wing on the race cam now. And Aston Martin probably not going to take a whole lot of time looking for an overtake. We know what Verstappen's racing style is like. They'll be starting to stick their nose up the inside of this Ferrari any opportunity they can. Verstappen will try and just chop up the momentum of Morgan ahead, and then when Morgan inevitably slows down from the lack of momentum, that's when Verstappen will really try and go for a move, bring it neck and neck before just trying to bully them out the corner as well. It's something we see Verstappen do quite a lot there. A very aggressive driver on the overtakes, but are very safe on the overtakes as well despite the aggression. It is something that you see as a tactic from a lot of racing drivers nowadays, and it is good. You know, Austin, arguably aggression is one of the best ways to overtake in sim racing, especially in these slightly longer races. You know, it's all very well, but you can't just sit behind someone waiting forever for that opportunity to arise. Sometimes you have to take matters into your own hands and start, you know, sticking your nose up the inside, showing that you are going to be going for an overtake and that you're going to be a problem for the driver ahead, and that can actually force the incident out of the driver ahead. Those little mistakes where they maybe just go a bit wide in the corner like Morgan is here can really open the door, and that is exactly what I'm talking about here. Verstappen now neck and neck with Sebastian Morgan in the 175. It's going to be a drag race down to the chicane here. Who's going to come out on top? Watch Shipson in the background as well, as the car's still neck and neck going to the chicane, and Verstappen able to bully their way through up into P4.
This backs up what I kind of just wanted to say. You've got some drivers that are really quick along across a single lap, and you've got some drivers that, you know, have that kind of racecraft and that kind of confidence to kind of hang moves like that. And then you've got drivers that are the whole package, and then there's Verstappen making a small mistake as well. That was Morgan looking a bit up the inside but backs out. But no, Verstappen is one of these. This is one of those races where Verstappen to me just really shines, in that they don't qualify quite as well as they'd maybe have liked, but their ability to sort of kind of stay calm and just hustle the way up the field. It's something that, you know, with experience and confidence, you develop that sense of racecraft, and that's, you know, that's one thing that they demonstrate really well. But again, I mean, that's still a big gap to Buchek, though. That's still 3.6. Was that 3.6 seconds to Buchek? So it's still a long way to go to catch the podium.
Yeah, absolutely isn't. Looking at the lap times, currently Buchek is just slightly faster across the race, of course. So it's hard to tell at this point in time. Christopher Verstappen has been stuck in traffic pretty much the entirety of this race, and with that, it's actually looking like right now.
It looked like Hamlin just made a bit of a mistake there as well. Just kind of hung a little bit wide and kind of lost the time. But as soon as I say that, Vanbrugh makes a slight mistake as well. Goes a bit wide down into the chicane there, and He makes some of the Helmut's made some of the time back, and again, it's like these cars on here just seem to be the choices. You're talking of mistakes. There's the chicane and the exit curb there that Helmut's just found, and launches the car skywards.
Yeah, absolutely. Harman, though, still within reach of Vanbrugh. Just needs to keep that pace quite close. 9 temps currently splitting out top 2 drivers. Batting out at the top, Shipston running in 5th is still on the tail of Verstappen, has since overtaken Sebastian Morgan as well. It's another Ferrari, though, chasing down the Aston Martin. Yet again, it looks like Tom Shipston has a lot of pace behind that Ferrari, as well as Verstappen. Currently falling off the back of Buchek even more. Buchek sitting in their own little bubble at the moment, 4.8 seconds behind Benjamin Harman, also 4.9 seconds ahead of Verstappen. They're currently just focusing on their own lap, trying to do their own thing, and not losing much time in the process.
That's it. They're just holding on to that P3. You know, it's like, again, a podium's a podium, right? So even with Harman and Vanbrugh fighting up front, you know, you never know. From Buchek's position, I mean, Vanbrugh and Harman, you know, dare I say, could make a mistake at some point along the way. Hellman with fastest lap at this point, by the way. The traffic could slow them up. So from Buchek's perspective, just by keeping it consistent, you've got a shot here at a potential race win still, as Ted Edwards is coming into the pits. I think that, yeah, they were caught up in the incident earlier on the tail end of it, so this might be a damage from that. But there is also that mandatory stop as well that they might be taking, and was that a flicker of the lights that I just saw? That's definitely some damage on the front end, so that might just be slowing them up a little bit.
I can tell you now that won't be the mandatory stop they are taking right now. Ted Edwards will have just decided that damage is too much to fix it up, as I believe we have a Pindo right in the centre of this race. I don't actually have any specific time to you, but I'm going to guess it's going to be dead on in the centre, probably opening with 45 minutes to go and closing with 35 minutes left, as well. As I have been informed, there is a pit window in the centre of this race, so the mandatory pit stop will have to be served within that in order to count as a pit. And you can see now the number 8 back out onto the track. Mandatory pit stop. The orange one next to their driver hasn't gone away, which means there's definitely a pit window that you have to serve in this race. So Ted Edwards there, deciding that the damage was losing them too much time out on track, has had to pit to fix it since. Now we'll be looking a lot more comfortable in that BMW as they try and close down on Kevin Boss ahead in the number 31. Kevin Boss falling off the back of the field a little bit, by the way. You can see them loading their own little bubble there on the track map.
That's it, just the 31. Sorry,
oh, sorry.
Sorry,
did I go again though?
I think just a little bit. You got it. You go. You got this.
Oh no, thank you. Yeah, I was just saying that Kevin Boss falling off the back a little bit off the order. In like their own little bubble, 24 seconds off the back there. Is Christopher Sheppen still in the heat of things, trying to close the gap to Buchek ahead, but it's hard to close a gap, Austin. You've got 2 Ferraris on your tail, and that's what Verstappen is experiencing right now. No time to focus on their own pace. They've got to worry about Shipston from behind.
Yeah, I mean, it does kind of feel at this point that Verstappen's basically dragging this Aston into a position that it does not really belong in. It seems like it really struggles around here. But one note I always knew about the Aston was that the turbo light can be quite something. I know, like, coming out of slow speed corners like the chicane, you really have to keep the momentum and the revs up to kind of get the exit. But even then, it's going to be a bit of a struggle. So again, maybe I know it was RCI Blue, they are 3rd in the championship right now, so they are kind of hanging it in there. But I mean, maybe the Aston is kind of the issue on this particular circuit. But again, P4, Buchek is pulling away. I mean, it's starting to look a bit more solidified, but there's still an hour to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, Verstappen currently sitting 3rd, but overall in the championship, it may just be the Aston Martin not performing on this particular track as well as they wanted to today.
Well, that might be the case, and I mean, still be chased down by Shipston, but again, like, maybe it's also just the mid-engine layout. You know, it seems to be that I can't even say that because with Buksak in third place, I mean that Mercedes is front-engined as well. So, I mean, we're at the point in the race now where it starts just to sort of kind of settle down. It's starting to sort of fall into a rhythm, fall into a groove, and that's the sort of thing we can expect from this point onwards. But with a few kind of isolated battles. Verstappen still holding off the likes of Shipton, but coming down into the final sector now, where it's easier to keep the momentum up. But again, we're holding a little bit of a gap. Seems to be the gap staying quite consistent coming down into the final two corners, and I mean right now Verstappen just really needs to sort of build up on that exit. Kind of overshoots the entrance there, but manages to get the power down coming down the straight. But this could also be a bit of an opportunity for the number 60 to try and make a move on top. So looking down into the order, nothing really changing up, nothing really changing at all in terms of battles on track, but this might turn into one of those races where strategy means more than outright pace. Looks like the gap just not really changing at all. Maybe Verstappen pulling a bit of a lead, but it's still a long way from Buksak.
Very close race indeed, happening here just about 20 minutes after the green flag. Very dark out here. Very unusual, isn't it, Austin, that you have a race here at Hungaroring that doesn't really transition into night. It's just dark to begin with. It changes sort of the mentality in the driver's eye line of where they're getting into some of these corners, particularly the turn 5 section and the chicane for sure makes a really big difference here in the dark versus in the sunlight. And I wonder how much of that, how many of these drivers are just sort of not driving at a probably 99 to 100%. Maybe they're dialing it back just 1%, trying to err on the side of caution, because drive-through penalties do occur here somewhat frequently.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those tracks where, especially as you say with turn 5, it's quite wide on the exit. I mean, you're looking behind there, looking at Shipston, you sort of see how wide they took that exit there into the final corner as well. So every time the car leaves the white lines, you do run the risk of picking up those dreaded penalties. And tyre pressures are also something I remember having to kind of watch out for around here as well. It's easy to kind of hit curves, especially over in the chicane. We've already seen Heilmann go airborne. So that is maybe something to consider.
Yeah, there's so much going on. I mean, we're late in this championship. There's so many drivers, as we saw in the pre-race standings, that are still in it. There's so many teams that are fighting for meaningful results here. And everybody believes, and this is the brilliant part, that they can win this championship, and they're absolutely correct in thinking exactly that. I mean, if we're talking about the 87 McLaren team in particular, the Spain without the A, it hasn't exactly gone their way, to be fair, and by that I mean they haven't actually scored any championship points thus far, but today it's gone completely the opposite direction. They have had it all in hand, but how long can that possibly be? Julian Vanbrugh leading the race over Benjamin Heilmann and the 796 for RCI Esports Yellow. They're right there now. Heilmann on the back of him. And at what point, if your team Spain without the A, what do you do here? You know you've got a driver. You've looked at the championship standings at some point. You know that they're at the pointy end, potentially trying to win a championship. How hard do you fight them, knowing that maybe you have less to lose than them. Do you get extra aggressive in this situation? And I think we already got our answer right there. Julian Vanbrugh not just getting out of the way in turn number 1. That might have caught Benjamin Heilman slightly unawares there as he completely drove down to the apex. The defensive line did Vanbrugh. Heilman just about got into the back of him. That'd have been on Heilman had there been contact.
It would have been. Almost, I mean, not just almost, but definitely, certainly. But again, this is what I mean. Like, it's great having one lap pace. It's great having pace in qualifying, but having pace when you've got someone kind of chewing at the back of you. You look at fastest laps. Heilman has fastest lap of the race so far. So, when you consider like Vanbraugh's kind of like, I guess, sort of, every driver has a mental state, but. Again, how easily psyched out is Vanbrugh right now by Heilman? Like, this is the difference between one lap pace and that's Rambach around in circles.
Yannick Rambach has had a huge off, and I don't know if this was by themselves. It was, and what a strange spin it was. They were on the opposite side of the racetrack from where that curb is, and I just wonder if they were trying to transition to the right side of the course for this corner they're going through now and just looped it, or maybe, I mean, certainly there didn't seem to be contact, and there was two spins. There were 2 spins, double the trouble, double the horror here in the nighttime as Rambach goes for 2 spins. Something very strange going on with that particular race car, and that will drop them quite a bit further back. The 701 Lamborghini, that team well up inside the top 10. In fact, they're in the top 5. The Powered by eSport Lamborghini having all sorts of drama here. But to answer your question, Austin, I don't think Yannick is phased at all. I think you get a little bit of the you have more to lose than we do, talking about RCI Yallo. And I think Vanbrugh sort of challenged him like, look, get a run, make it happen, but it's going to be on you if it doesn't come off. So I don't think Vanbrugh cares too much about Benjamin Heilman's plight. And I think after that turn 1, Heilman knows that now and is aware that that could possibly be a thing. So now if you're Heilman, you have to reset mentally, like, okay, they're going to defend this. They're not going to give it up just because it's early in this race. Their teammates over there at RCI have to be telling them to be a little bit cautious, but look at this. Immediately off the track and back on the track is Yannick Vanbrugh. Vanbrugh nearly leaving a gap open for Heilman. Heilman seeks the inside of the corner. Vanbrugh gets right back to the defensive line. Was that almost an unsafe rejoin? I don't know. I don't think they fully left the racetrack, but heads up driving from Heilman to get off the back of him, and heads up by Vanbrugh to immediately cover the inside. Another sketchy moment in as many laps.
That's it. For me, I think Vanbrugh moved a little bit late there, actually. That was like dangerously close to the braking zone. I mean, there was a corner right after that chicane where it all kind of went wrong. And you only have so long to like be able to kind of make a move or make any kind of defensive adjustments before it's considered, moving into the braking zone. But again, like from where I'm sat, maybe that was just a little bit late. But Vanbrugh will hold on to P1. And again, once again, Stewie has to kind of do that. Heilman has to do that reset to kind of think of a new approach.
If I'm Benjamin Heilman, I'm sketched out a little bit, if I'm completely honest. I've seen 2 very defensive moves, and they were very aggressive, and I think Yannick has made it very obvious to not only us in the booth, but everybody here, that they're not just going to be overtaken. It doesn't matter that you're a few tenths a lap or whatever quicker. Of course, to make a clean overtake, it does take a little bit more than that. It will take a mistake. Vanbrugh did make a mistake there, but luckily in a very, very low-speed corner was not enough to upset the balance there, and he came all the way back across the track and said, no, you will not. Gandalf style, you shall not pass. And in fact, Heilman just said, okay, I'm just going to back off here, knowing, again, that they have more to lose. No live stewards here on Wednesdays, folks. Stewarding is done all post-race, and it is up to the discretion of the teams to report stuff they feel that is reportable. So, beyond all of that, we don't expect any penalties to show up other than ACC assigned penalties. We have seen some of that in the series thus far, and of course we already mentioned that drive-through penalties here are somewhat common, and they creep up on you just a little bit. A couple of problem spots here. The tires start to wear. They get a little overheated sometimes, and just as we've seen cars skid off the racetrack, you can easily do that and get yourself a track limits warning, even by extending the track limits outward instead of cutting, which is, you know, I think for a lot of people, the ACC, it's unique. Normally, they're not used to extending track limits and getting a track limits warning, but you can do here, and some will.
No, that's it. You got to obey the, you got to obey the track limits at all times and not gain any kind of advantage. I find that if you release the throttle as you go off the track, it tends to be a bit more lenient. It'll give you a warning as opposed to one of the 3 strike warnings. You know, like the notification instead of the warning. But again, it's not lifting off the throttle isn't something you want to do. It's not really optimum for pace. But speaking of pace, Heilmann has caught up to the back of Vanbrugh once again, coming up to the same section of track where things got a little bit scary last time. Less than 0.3 of a second off of the back of that McLaren. And having a little bit of a wiggle there coming down into the chicane. Will they make the same mistake? I mean, if I'm there, no.
Oh, it's a mistake, all right.
Potentially worse. That's massively cut on the inside.
Massive cut down the inside. That could have been a track limits, Austin, but more importantly for them, they were able to maintain the lead. Heilmann had a look around the outside, but the short way around the track prevails, exiting that section. That whole middle bit for Team Spain without the A is a big trouble spot, and it's being a trouble spot here at the beginning of sector number 3. Another wiggle from Vanbrugh. Heilmann up the inside, side by side they were, and Heilmann has taken the spot. Will we see a retort from Vanbrugh? He's going to have maybe one more shot at this, but I reckon Benjamin Heilmann is already gone.
Don't say that too soon. I mean, having pressure, putting pressure on the front is one thing, but having to deal with it from behind is yet another. And now that Vanbrug's kind of lost the pressure from behind, we've seen how fast they can be. They've been poor position. You know, they held fastest lap of the race for a while up until Heilmann took it, and we've seen how aggressive they can be. So now that aggression just kind of changes hands really from defensive to offensive. So that might just shift this battle up a bit.
Well, if there's one thing I know about Benjamin Heilmann, he's pretty good with pressure from the rear, so I wouldn't really expect him to make too many mistakes in this situation. Usually cool as a cucumber is Benjamin Heilmann, but we'll see, because I definitely expected Vanbrugh to fall off the back a little bit more than they did in Sector 1, certainly with the rate that Heilmann was able to catch the 87 car. They also would have expected to lose them, but certainly they have not. Yannick's done a great job keeping to the back with them. Tom Shipston for Ground Zero, racing Ignacy Buchek in the 747. And of course, it says that's a harder racing car, and in fact, it is a harder racing car, but I can tell you that is also the RCI Esports Blue registered team. So they're duking it out here between these two for this position, and as close as you like here as they find it off. Tom Shipston trying to figure out probe for weakness, exactly like we saw with Heilmann and Vanbrugh. Vanbrugh knew what they needed to do to defend. Heilmann knew what they needed to do to get by. The same thing's happening here between Verstappen and Shipston. I may have incorrectly said this was Ignacy Buchek. That's the car in 3rd place. This is, of course, a fight for 4th place, as Shipston now probing for weakness in the 60 Ground Zero car.
No, and again, not a driver that's easy to kind of knock off the line. You know, it's of all the drivers you want, you need to find a way around.
Oh, look at this!
The faster car, but that's Shipston pitting. That's the number 60 Ferrari jumping into the pits.
Do you like that?
I don't know. It's gambling a lot on the undercut, isn't it? Because the pit window's been open for 15 seconds. So, I mean, talk about getting out of the way early.
I do like that move, and I'll tell you why. Because all Shipston was going to do was be bound up behind Christoph Verstappen, and you just said that he's a very hard man to pass, and you're absolutely bang on with that, Austin. I like that move. Tom realizes he could stick it out and try to fight Chris, or he could come in and hope he gets lucky with an undercut, hope that he has enough on the lap or so that it's going to take Verstappen and company to come down the pit lane, that they can at least make it a fair fight. Worst case scenario, you come out right behind him, which is also a possibility, and you square off and you know where you stand for the final 40 or so minutes of this race. I like that call. I think it's low risk. I think he's got a shot to make this pass, especially if he caught Chris to begin with. I really like that from Ground Zero Racing. Several other cars into the pit lane. Mike Redford brings the 198 Honda down pit lane to the attention of their team, and so is Rombach. Yannick Rombach has pitted as well. Remember the two spins earlier on. They brought that Lamborghini in, of course, and Jordan Daly in the 197 is in the pit. Jordan Daly in the 197. Weren't they talking in chat? They were posting emojis in chat. Jordan Daly texting and driving. We don't condone that in the real world, but you can just about get away with it if you're super skilled like Daly is. Daly enlightened me earlier this year. He's always been the kind of driver that will have something going on a different screen, a different monitor that he's also paying attention to. Can you imagine the concentration on that guy where he can actively participate in two things at one time? Absolutely incredible. But nevertheless, car down and gone from pit lane. More pit stops. Verstappen in this time. A direct response to the Ground Zero car, I would imagine.
No, that would sound just about right. Just try to make up all the, just try to kind of undulate the, not undulate, kind of recover from the undercut is what I'm trying to say. Try to kind of lessen its impact, because that might work around here. When you see the faster guys, when you see the big names kind of pit early, usually that means that there's some kind of merit into pitting early. And sometimes, we've said it in the box here, we've questioned the strategy. We've kind of, we've spoken between ourselves, and kind of questioned, has that been the right choice? 9 times out of 10 we get proven wrong, and usually the over or undercut works. So maybe the undercut is going to be really, really powerful today.
I just think it was an immediate reaction. Oh, this is going to be scary here. Carlos Kaladi in the 256 looking to make a move on Kulisek and unable to get it done, despite the 699 having a pretty massive wiggle there. It will do no damage to their position as Carlos is forced to fall back in line. Carbon copy of what we saw earlier, but going back to Christoph Verstappen and the 747 team, yeah, I think they had to come in, and I think it was the right decision, because at least according to our timing now, Verstappen is still in front of Tom Shipston, but it's definitely not 57 seconds like it says. The timing and scoring, of course, during pit stops gets completely confused, I would imagine. Or, oh, yeah, Shipston's in front. That's why it was confused, because Tom Shipston has done it. Pitting 1 lap earlier near the start of the pit window, 15 seconds in even. Tom Shipston for Ground Zero Racing has jumped the 747 of Christoph Verstappen.
That's it. I'm looking at the pit stop times. I mean, there's not much in it. I mean, Shipston's stop was about 3 seconds quicker than Verstappen's. Wow. But I think that might have made all the difference. They were fighting like tooth and nail. They were on the back. The Shipston was on the back of Verstappen when they came into the pit. So, I mean, it looks like they just made up that time in the pit. So I wonder what's made that. Is it? I mean, would it be fuel? Would it be the fuel, allowing some fuel differences, or would it be? Would it be what one car's taking tyres and fuel, one car's just taking fuel? There's a stop go 30 for Dormer there in the 30 Audi. That again, track limits. Actually, the stop go 30 speeding in pit lane, right?
Let's see. Well, yeah, Joe Dauber in the number 30. That can only be one thing for Rebound Racing. That is speeding in the pit lane, either getting on or coming off. I'd imagine it's getting in. Usually is. You can often hit the pit limiter button and it doesn't engage appropriately because you're not down to a suitable speed. You're trying to time it whenever you are at 50 kilometers per hour, which is pit road speed. You're trying to time that with getting to the line and hitting the button at the same time. And if you mess that up, that choreography, you can get yourself in trouble, because the first thing you do after you hit that button is you get fully back on the gas to make sure you maintain 50 kilometers down pit lane. And if you're not on the limiter when you do that, if you've mistimed your synchrony, you will just boot it and end up speeding on pit lane. And that's exactly what's happened to Rebound Racing. They will have to serve that stop and go 30 here in the next 3 laps. Roscom in the car now, and probably not the way they wanted to start this stint. Ignacy Buchek from third place into the pit lane as the top two continue around, and many others in the top 10 have continued as well. But going back to the Shipston-Verstappen battle in pit lane, as the best first name in sim racing is down the pit lane. I just think maybe it could have been fuel. That's a good guess. Another guess, 3 seconds is about how long it takes if you miss your stopping point and don't go straight up on the jacks. So it could have been a little bit more fuel, could have been missing your jack point as well. Either way, 3 seconds quicker in pit lane for Shipston. That made all the difference because they're only 3.5 seconds between them right now. The question now becomes for Verstappen and company, do they have the pace in that car to go back up there and catch Shipston for what should be about 4th place?
I mean, that's the question, isn't it? I mean, if tyres have been taken, you know, once they warm up, is that going to be the better option? Say if Verstappen's taken tyres and Shipston hasn't, then, you know, how is that going to play out in the later stages? Because, I mean, there's no way that your tyres don't at least drop off a little bit in pace if you decide to keep the same boots on for the entirety of the 80 minutes. Benjamin Hellman coming down into the pits now with Vanbrugh, so both the lead cars in the pits together. This is going to be a straight up fight to the end, right? A straight up fight to the end of the pit lane, right?
I tell you what I thought. I thought that Heilman would get out of Dodge, just drive off into the non-existent sunset here tonight. That has not happened at all. Vanbrugh was right up the back of the 796 the entire way through, and they have come to pit lane together. Only one car pushing their luck. Kulisek and the 699 racing team have went out for one more lap. They shouldn't be in any particular danger to miss it. They're going to have about a minute or so to get into pit lane. They certainly can't do another lap, but unless they stack it big time, they should be fine. But it is worth mentioning every other team didn't risk it, didn't feel it was worth it. Heilman and Vanbrugh racing off of the pit lane, literally, and getting out there as best they can. The 87 now piloted by Tyler Hobson, installed into that car, and will continue on in the race. I don't see, matter of fact I do, coming through turn 3 section of the racetrack. Heilman, a quicker stop for them visually. You don't see them there. There they are, coming through this section here, the end of sector number 1. Heilman out clearly in front now, the biggest gap that they've had, and they've done it on the pit lane.
No, that's I mean, that's always just the kind of advantage really to just getting the stop done. But again, the difference being that Hellman being still in that car and then the 87 having to do the driver change. I mean, that's what a minimum of 30 seconds stopped. So I do wonder if the extra seconds added on is a result of that driver change. But look at this, Bugsek catching right up to the back of Hobson. And again, Bugsek was just kind of floating around in 3rd place in their own little bubble. You know, that you had the podium kind of already locked in, but didn't really have the need to really to push any harder than what they were. So I remember saying, what if something happens to the lead cars? What if an opportunity opens up? And well, here's the opportunity.
It certainly is. This is not what Hobson expected to be doing, and that's the last thing you want as a driver. I can tell you from experience in endurance racing, you just want to get out there and run some laps, don't you? You just want to get sort of sorted out. You're hoping you don't come out in traffic, and you certainly don't want to come out in a fight because you're not settled in, you're not comfortable, and this doesn't make you comfortable, and you don't have that opportunity. If you're Ignacy Buchek, who is racing themselves, and they're already comfortable, so they already know what to expect from the car. They know what they're feeling. They're going to be a little bit more aggressive in this situation. So it could have been on for first, and now it's a fight for maybe 2nd place as Hobson goes a little bit deep there, V's off the corner and is able to keep it, but right on the back of them still is Ignacy Buchek, the 64. They're not giving up any ground here, is the MRT KTM team, and they can't, because they're fighting for this championship. They're really trying to keep themselves in it, and I think they will do, especially if they make this pass here. It is going to be anybody's championship next week for the finale if the 64 can make this pass. It will be a little bit of breathing room for the 796, if I'm honest, if they don't get it, but it still will be championship on nonetheless. Hobson fighting for everything right here. Defensive line on and off of every corner.
That's it. I mean, it was that chicane was a really good opportunity to kind of close the gap. I mean, that the front engine Mercedes definitely set up a bit softer than the McLaren, definitely better on those curbstones. But I mean, that's just been a trait of the McLaren for the longest time, hasn't it? It's not always been the greatest car on the curbs, but that's where the advantages for the Mercedes start to run out in these closing stages. But again, this is Hobson finding their own pace as well. Hobson finding that rhythm, as you said, Jesse. You come out from as a fresh driver. The last thing you want is to be caught up in something like this. You kind of have to adapt really, really quickly, and that's something that Hobson's managed to do so far with a few mistakes here and there. But Bookshare does have the opportunity to make that into P2.
Certainly does. He had to, especially that opening lap or so, had to be smelling a little bit of blood in the water there. Now it's cooling off a little bit. Hobson getting a little bit more confident in the car. The tires are, of course, helping in that regard. They're coming up to pressure, and it's working a little bit better for them. Just reading some things from chat. Kevin Boss has joined us and said, weird car this, got 16 seconds worth of damage, and it actually became more stable. I think that's a rare time where they haven't fixed damage on the grounds that it actually made that Honda, that number 31 wheelie slow car, a bit more stable. That is a very rare deal, but it is it shades of damaging both sides of the suspension of a race car to make sure that the geometry is straight enough that you can even drive the thing to keep it from pulling one way or another, I think is what they've got going on there. Joe Dauber, a little bit sarcastic, certainly, has said fantastic race as it hasn't gone their way with penalties thus far. Carlos Caladiad has taken the 256 up to 6th place, making that pass on John Arazer. That was about as simple as it possibly can be here at Hungaroring.
Yeah, that was a pretty good move as well. So, I mean, yeah, that's a pretty nice jump up, and only, well, I mean, I said only, but it's still 10 seconds off of Verstappen, who is still 5 seconds off of Shipston. So Shipston really made the most of that pit stop, and it's kind of run away with it. And with a potential, even if these guys slow each other up, I'm going to pitch hypothetical here to you, Jesse. If Boschek and Hobson slow each other up enough, does that mean that Shipston has a potential to join this battle for 2nd and 3rd place as well?
Oh, you bet. Shipson's got a pretty fast rocket ship in that number 60 Ferrari, and if they get to racing quite hard like they are right now, you got Buchek down to the inside, Hobson giving them all the room, maybe trying the undercut there, but it isn't going to come to pass. Just too much speed in turn number 1. Ignacy Buchek in 2nd place now. The leader of the race fallen back to 3rd in just a few laps. And if they were to finish like this, a long way, folks, to the checkered flag here tonight, some 30 minutes left to go, this would set up an epic championship fight for the finale of this series. It might not be winner take all. There might be a little bit of doing for the 64, but they would only need 1 or 2 positions over Heilman in the 796 car. So it's not the biggest do for them to have to make up, but it will be quite close, I can assure you that, even in this instance. But you never know. It's 8.3 seconds. We're going to have to take a good long look at that 64 to see if they're able to make up any of that gap to the leader, because if this flip-flops, if Ignacy's able to get up there and pass Benjamin Heilman, 7.9 seconds now, coming down. If Heilman gets past, it's going to be almost a dead-on tie for the championship lead with 1 to go.
That's just it. I mean, it's all to look forward to. Drive-through for the 175 of Schnaffner. Again, that will be track limits, and I didn't expect track limits to be as much of a problem as they are being. I mean, we've seen the stop go 30 for, I believe it was Dauber and their team, but that was for pit lane. That was for a pit lane indiscretion. But I did see Daly pick up a drive-through earlier as well after the incident, so that would have been track limits, and Schaffner with the track limits now as well. So yeah, no, the track is biting back hard, and there's still half an hour to go. So again, there's the potential that could even shift things up around the top too.
Yeah, horrible here for Dylan Schaffner in the X4, or is it 4X? Excuse me, it might be. It is, no, it's X4. I had it right the first time. X4 Motorsport car, that 175 Ferrari, as they've got a drive-through. Of course, no live stewards here today. That can only mean one thing. That is a drive-through for track limits. Austin and I talked about this just a little bit ago. This track is somewhat notorious for the very quick track limit warnings off of some of these corners. Not necessarily the inside of any of these corners, most prominently the inside of the corner for the chicane, of course. You can also, Austin, and I figured this out personally because I've done this twice, you can get a double limit if you cut the chicane. 2x for one incident. You love to see it.
That's fairly huge, actually, but, oh, wow, yeah, no, it's like, yeah. I always thought there was kind of like chances that you can kind of spend if you ever need to. I mean, it works really. I found it works really well for tracks like Silverstone, coming out of the exit of Cops or Stowe, for example, where if you need to kind of catch up with someone, the race, it's nearing the end of the race. You use one of the warnings as an opportunity to kind of close the gap a little bit. Use them as a resource, not as a punishment, but. No, it is risky doing that, and as you said, if you can pick up 2 warnings in one corner, oh, no, that's asking for the penalty. But as it stands at the moment, Razor holding off the likes of Barr in the 212 McLaren, and I did a fairly good job of it too. I mean, that it doesn't look like the 212 is within striking range just yet, but that could just change in a matter of time.
Well, here's the thing about Joe Dauber confirming in the chat that Joe was completely faultless in the penalty that they received, just absolutely throwing their teammate under the bus, but we do appreciate it nonetheless. Joe Dauber says, it was when I handed over the car, my teammate got it, not me, therefore it is his fault. So there you go. Joe shifting blame. Joe, you know that makes you a professional racing car driver, don't you? Whenever you're shifting blame to somebody else instead of yourself. But that's the way it has crumbled for them. A couple of other drive-thrus in the race as well. The gap coming down to P1, and I haven't been doing the maths, as you might not expect, but I don't have to. At this rate, Buchek would catch Benjamin Heilman for the lead near the end of this race.
That's huge. That's actually fairly mega. That's coming back. I mean, let's not forget that Buchek was in their own like little bubble. Like they were just kind of vibing there in P3 without any kind of real pressure or any real kind of like motivational gap to really kind of push harder. It was it was at least a 5-second gap between themselves and what was Hellman at the time. There's a Razor coming in with a drive-through penalty once again. Track limits coming through. And that fight between themselves and the 212 of Barr, that fight's, I mean, that's as good as over for the time being, right? That's Barr definitely making it through, as well as many other drivers as well. That's a Razor down the field, which is not what you want to see.
This is going to frustrate George Barr because George Barr was hoping that a Razor would come down immediately and serve that penalty. He hasn't done that, and now he is still in front of the BDG sim racing car of George Barr, holding him up ever so slightly, halting his progress. Even though Razor has a penalty, there's nothing they can do about it. They have to serve it within 3 laps, within 2 laps now, because they've crossed the line. And I believe, no, that wasn't who I thought it was. It was the 420 car? Yeah, it was. It was Felipiak who nearly ran off in turn 1 in the background. But John Racer has that penalty. He's got 2 laps to serve it. Barr frustrated because even in the wake of the car, you're losing a little bit of time, right? Would have just appreciated a Razor to take that penalty. Of course, is the 699 racing teams on recognizance that when they serve that penalty, of course, but that doesn't help your feelings if you're George Barr right now, where you're like, come on, man, you got a penalty, just pit for it. Don't hold me up in the process. But hey, that's racing.
That is, and as long as everyone keeps within the rules, which Razor is doing, then I mean, there's nothing stopping them from hindering Barr at all in this situation. But yeah, no, I can definitely see George's frustration.
A little bit of steam coming out of the helmet at this point.
No, it's not worth turning on board at that point. Can't see through it. But no, that's still a massive gap between themselves and Kalatigut, though. That's a 10-12 second gap. Barr's got a mountain to climb to be able to catch up to. But yeah, there we go. That's a Razor coming in to serve that drive-through now.
Well, Barr's not actually that far behind. They're only a couple of seconds behind. Kaladian's 11 seconds behind Verstappen, of course, but that's sort of what the frustration was for Barr, was realizing that Eraser was doing nothing wrong. He can serve the penalty in those 3 laps anytime he wants to, but Barr obviously would like to get a move on, because Kaladian now, who was just basically 1.5 seconds behind, is now nearly 3 seconds behind Carlos Kaladian for 6th place. So that just sort of delayed the potential arrival of a battle for 6th place, and Eraser, well within his right to not only defend but stay on the track as long as he could physically do. Of course, if he would have done it for more than 3 laps, he'd have been instantly disqualified, and that's not obviously what they were into. I was wondering, I was trying to do the quick math, how many positions Eraser would lose there. He might only lose the 1 position, even though he had that penalty. So yeah, he's behind Barr now. He had the better part at the time of 17, 18 seconds. No, Hooting has got by him, so he did lose 2 spots, but that is all John Eraser will lose. And with that car the way it was, he might be able to gain some of those spots back. A little bit further back, and in fact, right behind John Eraser is the Mike Racing Mike Redford car, the 198. Is there a little bit of blood in the water here for Mike Redford? Maybe get up a spot here in the top 10.
Maybe looking for it. I mean, Redford's one of these drivers that, is kind of like, he's been around for a little while. He's kind of developed that kind of confidence, and we talked about that racecraft earlier. And definitely one of the drivers that I've seen kind of improve, incrementally over the time period that I've been watching and commentating over their races. So, I mean, if you'd said to me, I don't know, I want to say like, 10 months ago, a year ago, Redford and Eraser be fighting for position, I'd be, a bit optimistic. But here we are, Redford fighting Eraser, and that's nothing but praise on Redford as well, and the improvements that's been made.
Well, an eagle-eyed viewer in chat, Daniel Crinson, has seen something that I've only just clocked, and they beat me to it by a good 3 or 4 minutes. So well done you in chat. Gal Manso is catching this driver, Mike Redford, right now. So there may be a fight for the final spot inside the top 10. It has cooled off slightly. He got to 4 seconds, did the RPMS Sim Sport driver, and it has been sitting at about 4 seconds for the majority of this lap or so. But it isn't going out, more importantly than anything else. Zhao is pacing Mike Redford in front of them. By the way, the gap has stabilized out in front as well. It was as low as 7.4 seconds. Heilman has stabilized it. Buchek no longer gaining ground, but that still is going to lead to a very tight championship regardless. And it's going to be a little bit tighter than I thought too if this result holds, because Heilman may go on to win this race for RCI, but the 64 has the quickest lap of the race. That's bonus points. That's mini bonus points they're taking away from Heilman. That would make this just about a 5 or so point gap for the final race, meaning that whoever finishes in front of who might as well win the championship next week if this result holds.
So it's kind of like a Formula One style kind of go for fastest lap, towards the end of the race, if you can't make up for the position. So that's definitely something to bear in mind. That's the number 7 cars like Hooting with a drive-through penalty. Again, that will be track limits for that number 7 Porsche. Again, when we talk about track limits being a big issue around here, I didn't expect it to be quite as big as it is.
Well, do you know what it is?
Go on.
It's been an hour. These drivers mostly, even if they're only doing hour stints, they're used to their races being an hour. This is an 80-minute race. They've used up their track limits because they're conditioned to say, well, I can have 3 limits in an hour. And they've been pushing it. They've been in fights. They've been racing each other this entire time. Case in point, what's going on here with Dominicus and Schaffner. They've been doing this for the entire hour. They've used up the track limits, and the problem is there's still 20 minutes on that clock, on that countdown timer. This is not uncommon here. What is uncommon is the race length. So they've raced to the benefit of their knowledge, to the maximum extent of their track limits, but the problem is there's still 20 minutes left. They've used it all up early in this race, and now everybody is paying the price. Hooting brought that car down pit lane, the Racing 25 Years number 7 car, and they have rejoined the race in a spot well outside the top 10. They may be 12th. They might even be, nope, they're actually still in front of this group. But Dominicus making a move, thinking about it, loses the car just a little bit. The X4 Motorsport car driven by Dylan Schaffner has just about saved it, but they get loose here, and they've let Peter Dominicus through.
No, that's dropping the ball a little bit there as well, and no, that will be the Honda getting past the Ferrari. And not a lot of place to actually make that time back as well, getting a little bit edgy over the exit curb there, shooting it coming out of that drive-through in P12 as well. So just ahead of this group here, and so again that might also be under a slight bit of pressure. I've been looking at the gaps as well between Shipston and Hobson. The battle for we might see towards the end. We might see a good old battle for P3 coming through, because Shipston's lap times have been fairly rapid.
They certainly have. It was 2.3, and then it was 2, and now it's 1.7. Tom Shipston from ground zero is chasing down Hobson, and what a disaster this is going to feel like for the 87 if they don't get anything for this, really, a podium for the spin team. The Spain without the A team. Still one of the most humorous things in sim racing. I am super happy that everybody takes their sim racing super serious and tries to take all the fun out of it. That's a joke, of course, for anyone at home. I love team names like that. Team Spin, as they're called, or Spain without the A, as they're registered on the RaceRCI.com website. I do love that, but they're not loving this. They're getting caught from behind. That was another 10th taken out in that sector of the racetrack. From leading this race down off the podium. I just wonder what's going on with that car. It looked very loose, didn't it, Austin, before Heilman got by? I haven't seen it too out of sorts yet, but it just hasn't looked the same as it did early on.
No, it just doesn't seem as composed. It doesn't feel as settled. And as you say, Jesse, from where we're sat here, it doesn't look like it's the same McLaren at all. And I do wonder how time is going to affect that car. From Shipson's perspective, you see it in the distance, and when you see a car, when you get visual, it almost drives you further, right? Like it's no longer the gap between you and the car ahead is no longer numbers on a timesheet. It's visible, like you could see it. So especially when you can see that you're getting closer and you're catching. That's just going to give Shipston more confidence. I mean, Shipston's already got to have so much confidence for making that pit stop move on Verstappen. So, I mean, with confidence comes momentum, and with momentum comes results like this.
I thought you were going to say with great speed comes great responsibility, but you know what it is. Time for driver psychology with Jesse Lee. I'm not a qualified psychologist, but I understand racing psychology, and I'm going to explain it to you. This is Tom Shipston. This is his driving position in his number 60 Ferrari, and yes, that is a chartreuse green 87 McLaren in front of him, but that's not what Tom Shipston sees. Tom Shipston sees a delicious, gigantic carrot.
It's a huge carrot that's been. I mean, that's kind of what I was saying. Like when you get visual, that's a good way of thinking about it. It's just a carrot being dangled in front of Shipston's face, and well, yeah,
he's going to get that carrot.
He is. That gap's now down to a second. So in terms of like a juicy fight for the podium, it's definitely on.
Yeah, I mean, I joke and all, but that is really what it's like. And you get that extra shot in the arm, don't you, Austin? You've been in that situation where you're catching a guy, all of a sudden you can see him off of some of the corners, and then all of a sudden you're on the same straight as them, and you're following them into corners, and you're trying to beat them off out of corners, and you're getting better runs, and all of a sudden that gap keeps getting smaller and smaller. It gets under a second, and you get real excited, because then you're paying attention to everything they do. You're trying to set them up for a move. You're trying to figure out where they're so weak, where you're so good, and you're going to try and facilitate that move. And that is the carrot effect. You've dangled it out there. You get super excited for a potential battle for the ability to make up a spot. And it's not small potatoes here either. We're talking about a podium spot near the end of the season. Points matter at this point for your final standing. They certainly matter for Ground Zero Racing, who's just outside the top 5 in the championship standings. The top 3 here today will serve them very, very well. They might see them up into the top 5, just absolutely demolishing Hobson in the middle sector. Oh, look at this!
It's funny. I thought it was going to be really anticlimactic for a moment. I was like, okay, well, that's the move done. There's not much to talk about. But no, Hobson does fight back. Hobson doesn't quite let it go. Hobson, maybe in a sense, realizing they're under threat, coming down into T1. Shipston taking the outside. I'm also being forced to the outside, being squeezed slightly to the pit wall. And I mean, yeah, I don't think that's going to really make it through.
That was very close. I love that. I loved that. Went around, tried to go down the inside, didn't quite have the overlap. Tried to go around the outside and didn't have the overlap, and snaking both cars down the pit straight here, trying and fighting for position. I think Shipston telegraphed every single move that they potentially made, and I think it was very, very smartly, but also very predictably covered by Tyler Hobson. Didn't want to do an overly aggressive move there. Just sort of shaded him to the left, shaded him to the right, crisscross. Everybody clap your hands. But I think it was very well done, but this might be it. Bad off of the chicane is the McLaren, but no room to make a move for Shipston. You can tell Tom's going to make a move. It's going to be definitive. They're not just going to go in there all willy-nilly. Do you see how easily Shipston just sort of let off a little bit, let them back in line, and reloaded? That's excellent. Didn't have to hit the brake, didn't have to kill momentum. Still on the back of the 87 is the Ground Zero car.
Yeah, no, it's again, I've said it several times this race, but that's the racecraft coming in, and that's one thing this track really delivers in spades. Whilst you were talking there, Jordan Daly picked up a drive-through and served a drive-through.
Wow.
So that's the second drive-through of the race, I believe. So they had one earlier on as well, which we didn't report on in the comms, but I did spot that. It was there. But again, going down into T1, it's another opportunity for Shipston to try and make a move. But I think, in a way, Hobson is kind of more aware now, given the situation. Hobson's more aware of Shipston's pace, and I don't know if it's that Hobson's gotten quicker, but they seem more aware of Shipston's presence. They're going into defensive a lot more. They're not making as many mistakes. That McLaren still looks a little out of touch. I mean, you see it, especially around here, turn 2, turn 3, and down into turn 5. Last lap, it got a little bit of a sideways sort of slide, a bit of a four-wheel drift, just a little bit there. So it looks like it's struggling back on the front end now as well. So, I mean, there's still 10 minutes of the race to go, and catching up is one thing, overtaking is another entirely. This part of a third place could still be anyone's.
Certainly could do. No movement between the top 2. If anything, Buchek has lost about a 10th or so. Another bad exit from the chicane, and immediately on him that time again was Shipston. Shipston went down to the inside, got pinched just a little bit, and to avoid contact, Tom Shipston completely backed out of it. Nearly lost the car a little bit as well, with it all bound up on the apex like that, under braking and turning, of course, but they were able to just about get away with it. But you know who hasn't been able to get away with it here? It is the 87, the team spin car. They've not spun it, but they are going to have to take a spin down pit lane. Third place, drive-through penalty, track limits.
This opens up the lights for Verstappen as well to kind of make up a bit more of that time as well, at least make up the position that they lost at Shipston, because I don't know how long this drive-through is going to be. There's the slowdown on the pit limit there.
Like 23, 25 seconds.
So yeah, with like 13 seconds behind, Verstappen should actually make this up into P4 again. So
oh yeah, he sure is. He's just passed him right now. There he is.
Yeah, there we go. So that's a huge mistake from Hobson. That's cost them the podium.
Here comes Kaladian as well.
Kaladian's been kind of like one of the sort of like silent stars of this race, I think. They've just, again,
what about George Barr?
George Barr as well, yeah, both
George Barr's got by him. Absolute disaster right now for the 87.
That's it, just by keeping consistent, keeping out of trouble, both Kalasian and Barr have just made up so many positions throughout the course of this race, and yeah, a lot of it was was the early race contact, the big pile-up that we saw. And a lot of it's been other drivers around them picking up drive-throughs and penalties, and there was a stop go as well thrown in there for good measure. But again, just by keeping it, keeping a level head, just kind of, as you said, Jesse, driving it like 80-90% rather than trying to push the limits all the time, that's what gets you the results at the end.
Yeah, a lot of these drivers too, whenever they're in a fight, they do dial it back a little bit because they know that any sort of contact here in RCI, it's not like running a pub race where you just sort of forget about it. Anything here, of course, is sort of reportable, and you don't want to get yourself into trouble like that. As Stephen Quee has brought the 701 to pit lane, that is an unscheduled stop, and I wonder if maybe they've underfueled that race car or something has gone awry for the 701. Either way, the powered by eSport car, who came into today 5th in the championship, has made a 3rd stop on the day, and this one will drop them even further back and almost certainly out of contention for a top 5 championship spot, though. Don't take that to the bank. I have been a little bit wrong before. Mike Red 95 on the wing of the Mike Racing 198, and this shows the extent of the damage. João Manso right up the back of the 198, the 222 Lamborghini, the RPMS SimSport car, trying to get one more spot here before the end of this race. Redford and everyone in company promoted up a spot, of course, because of the incident. This would have been for 10th place. It's now for 9th place. The winner goes the spoils here in the final 8 minutes of this race. This race is absolutely flown by.
It really has. It feels like it's been a regular length race as opposed to it being a full 80 minutes. And I think it's started to show for the drivers at least. I mean, with some of the track limits that we've seen, as you say, Jesse, it's easy to kind of tune your brain into it being an hour long when without accounting for the extra 20 minutes. Mike Redford under pressure from Manto at the 222 Lamborghini, coming down into turn 3, a little bit of a fight there, but Lorenzo not being close enough to really think about making the move. Not just yet, at least. It's going to be a little bit of kind of setting that car up, just kind of planning the overtake, because as soon as you hit sector 2, the track narrows in and it becomes really, really hard to overtake, and it's not really, you have to kind of hope for a mistake at that point, or at this point, hope for the dreaded penalty.
Certainly is, and you got to be aware of that. So many cars have gotten penalties today, and everybody probably sitting on at least 1 or 2 warnings. It's one of those racetracks, you just pick them up without even really thinking about it, and especially as hard as you race around here. So I wouldn't suspect anybody here is going to have a clean sheet, but you got to be aware of that. You can you mentioned this, Austin, earlier. It was a very good take. You mentioned that you kind of use them up in a race as a racing driver, don't you? You use them as mulligans in certain cases, get out of jail free cards, if you will. And right now is where you could really use one of those. You make a little bit of a mistake, maybe you run out wide, you get a track limit warning and it doesn't hurt you, or if you're on 3, you can't do that, so you're a little bit more aware of that. You tighten up your line just a little bit. Both these cars not making any mistake. Mike Redford planning the car exactly where they need to for Mike Racing, and João Manso doing the exact same thing for the 222 team of RPMS SimSports. It's going to be a dogfight here till the end of the race. But you know what? Before we get to the end of the race, just want to say thank you all for joining us for a special Wednesday stream. We just couldn't let this championship continue without bringing you this racing, without bringing you this action and this championship that is certainly, if this result holds, going to come down to the absolute wire. I suspect next week, whomever wins between the 796 and the 64 will be crowned champion. We'll bring that to you live here on RCI TV. Like, subscribe. Don't forget to do so on your way out. And of course, a big thank you to our partners that make this race and every race possible. AK Esports, Fanatec, Digital Motorsports, Go Setups, and Driver 61. We thank you so very much for clicking on the links, visiting all of those that support us here at RCI. Support those that support us is what we say.
No, that is, I like that, Jesse. That's a nice way of thinking about life, isn't it? spread the love, spread the support. But Barr as well, looking back now, Barr holding off the likes of Hobson, only half a second off. So, I mean, we're talking about Barr making up that time. Robson has the potential here. I mean, I said it's half a second. It's more like 8/10 now at this point, but there's still an opportunity for that 87 McLaren to make up one more place. But overshooting the first corner like that isn't going to help them at all.
No, it certainly is, and all that's going to do is put them into the graces of the car behind, which I believe is off the lap. I think that's Felipiak in the 420 behind them, so that shouldn't be too big of a deal for them. But even still, you don't want to invite that sort of thing. John Racer in the 699 racing car doing their best to get home here inside the top 10. No threat from behind. That's Redford and Manso fighting over 9th place spot, and a clear gap in front of them as well. If Barr and Hobson were to get together, then maybe a racer could consider gaining a spot that way, but pretty solid in their position. The top 3 pretty solid themselves. Verstappen just outside of that in 4th. Kaladian is, if they come home in 5th, this will feel almost like a win for Carlos Kaladian and crew, that 250-16 rebound racing. They were sort of on the back half of the top 10, and now all of a sudden inside the top 5. That's what good, clean racing will get you, folks. Underrated thing, just being steady Eddie in a race like this. Everybody wants to go out and they want to be him or her, you know what I mean? But more often than not, just being steady is the way you want to go about it, and rebound racing certainly has been that today. So many penalties, not on them though. Mike Redford has it all left to do though with Manso.
That's it. Again, Redford's had a great race as well. I know they kind of, I think I saw them earlier in the chat making a comment on the NSX, it said that it's a bit slidey, had maybe more than a little bit of a complaint again about the car, but I mean, running in the top 10 now, like that's a fairly big thing, but still under pressure from Manzo. 2.5 minutes remaining, just about. It's only good enough for, what, 2 more laps? So we could expect to potentially see here. So, I mean, they've held them off for this long. It's they're dealing with the pressure really quite well. What's 2 more laps?
I tell you what, the sand in the hourglass is ticking away, and with each grain of sand that falls to the bottom, Manso's options become more and more limited. How desperate is Zhao to make up this position, as the leader is going to come to the line, and you're going to be very much correct. With 2 minutes 5 on the clock, that is 2 laps of racing left to go tonight. These drivers will have a little bit more than that, of course, as they are in front of the leader of the race. So they've got closer to 3, but that's still slim pickings here. If you get a run, you are going to have to take it. Desperation setting in just a little bit. And for Redford, it's no better, because you know you've got to hold on for just about 2.5 more laps now, and that can, in some drivers, make them a little bit over-eager, and a little bit over-eager there from Manso. Had to take avoiding action. Luckily for Zhao, that was either not a track limit warning by cutting the chicane, or they had one to give. Either way, it is still play on here with 2 to go.
Yeah, that was very, very close. I saw the front of the Lambo get very close on the onboard from Redford there. But again, both drivers were no doubt thankful to not come together, and because both the drivers are still running top 10, right? So the last thing you want to do is take each other out, especially when you said, Jesse, we have the not live stewarding, but the report stewarding, decisions to be made later on in the week. So yeah, no, it's not really on the prerogative to get involved in a tangle like that, especially this late in the race. And what's that done in terms of time? That's 0.6 of a second behind for Manzo. So Manzo has dropped back a little bit, but as we're saying, opportunities to get by are slowly running out. And turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, they are really the sort of best opportunity really on this circuit to get by. And there's only going to be one more time that they can really utilize that.
Leader has just crossed the stripe. It is the last lap for the leader, but because these cars are uniquely almost right in front of the leader, they have 2 laps to go still, or just a little bit shy of that, so they still have a little bit of time. But don't take that as overeagerness from Zhao in the chicane. What happened was Mike went into the corner very, very steep, and that's where Zhao wanted to be as well. Zhao had to hit the old eject button here in this very corner a lap ago to keep from running into the back of Mike Redford. Redford off of the racetrack, but luckily for him, very short corner, or very short straight, I should say, leading into a corner, so no way to gain. Another off track for Manso. Was that a track limit warning? I wonder. All 4 tires off the racing surface.
It quite potentially, actually. That's
Oh,
the
he's
thing.
digging. Look at him.
Yeah, he wants this. He really, really wants this. I wonder if he realizes that there's another lap, because that aggression has been visibly turned up, and it's still, and that's quite. I know you say it's quite a unique sort of situation where they're so far, like kind of,
He went wide.
so far physically ahead of the leader that we do have that other lap, and yeah, no, I think Mansell wants this. Maybe wants it too hard, sideways in the last corner. And that's just cost them all that time and that opportunity into turn 1 and turn 2. That's now gone.
I think that might be it. There's a yellow flag in the penultimate corner, but that's only because they're trying to get behind the leader to keep them from having to do an additional lap. What can you say about Benjamin Heilman? With the championship nearly on the line, they've done just about all they possibly can do for the RCI esports team. Benjamin Heilman's going to come across the line and win it here at Hungaroring.
What could you want, really? I mean, Heilman has just driven a race, but Buczek as well. Again, going from that bubble to P2, a little bit on the back of the misfortunes of others, a little bit, all on their own merit. That's Shipstead as well at P3, again, with the I don't even want to say it's on the misfortune of Hobson. Shipstead had the pace to get P3 and would have probably most likely have found their way through to Christopher Streppen coming in P4. Again, another clean race. Kalate good, no doubt taking P5 too, but I mean, what more can you ask?
Unless somebody absolutely steals fastest lap here as they're coming to the line, which we don't suspect is going to happen, it looks like Ignacy Buczek will take the fastest lap here today, and that will be very close. It might be 5, maybe 8 points between them going into the final round in 1 week's time at Spa-Francorchamps. It's going to be close, folks. You're going to want to see that live here next Wednesday evening. The championship finale will be a straight-up fight between the 796 and the 64. Everybody else coming to the line. John Razor now. Mike Redford has been able to hold off Zhao Manso. Absolute ice water in his veins. All of the dives, all of the moves, and one tire dip themselves. Nothing too untoward that would lose them the spot for Mike Redford. And Manso, of course, in 9th place. The best first name in sim racing will, of course, take the final position inside the top 10. Absolutely fantastic wheel-to-wheel racing, flag-to-flag here tonight, don't you think?
No, that's it. From green light to checkered, there's always been something going on. There's been quiet moments here and there, but it's all just kind of ramped up at certain points, and a lot of energy all in one place. So, no, that was a good one, Jesse.
Certainly was quite a fun race. The results confirmed here. Fastest lap does go to 2nd place in the championship. The win, of course, to the leader coming into today. That will make it quite tight indeed in the final round. Of course, barring the drop round playing tricks on me, it is quite close. The big difference is obviously the 64 car has a 3rd place or 2 3rd place finishes, whereas Benjamin Heilman has managed to park it in 1st or 2nd place throughout this championship. All that good work, though, Austin, can be undone with 1 5th place finish at Spa. They get caught up in an incident, and it could be over that quickly.
Yeah, that's it. One incident, and that's kind of that's kind of this. I don't know if it's kind of their season, but it's definitely a mountain. It's definitely a hole to climb up out of, and that's sometimes not the easiest thing.
No, it certainly is not, but you don't want to get lulled into a false sense of security either. But while we wait here, trying to see if we're going to have a post-race interview from the winner, get their perspective of the race, of course. Did lead it flag to flag and got in there late and just sort of took over the race. But we'll see if we can't get you an interview. In the meantime, just want to thank all of our partners that make this race and every race possible, starting off with AK Esports, a premier leader in esports management and hosting. They certainly help us around here with things like servers and we couldn't do it without them. For more information on how AK Esports can help you with your esports events and server solutions, you can find them over at akesports.it. akesports.it. Digital Motorsports is your one-stop shop for everything sim racing, from rims to full-on sim rigs. You can find what you're looking for, all the top brands, over at digitalmotorsport.com. And while you're over there, check out their bespoke sim rig builder. You can build it from the ground up the way that you want it. Very, very unique to digitalmotorsport.com. Driver 61 is the place to go if you're looking to improve upon your race driving ability, your strategy, your consistency, or just your outright speed. They offer one-on-one driver coaching and full-on racing schools. Follow the link in the description to get more information on setting up a coaching session with Driver 61. Fanatec is the leader in direct drive technology, and in fact, they just came out with I think it's a 400 USD direct drive bundle for the 5 Newton meter. You get a pedal set, a wheel, and a base for a little less than $400 US. Obviously less taxes, of course, in the US, but that is absolutely incredible. They have reset the bar on direct drive technology, something that a few years ago was almost prohibitively expensive. Fanatec leading the way there. Go check out all their offers on fanatec.com. And of course, last but not least, Go Setups. If you want to get quicker instantly, if you just want the setups that the pros use, GoSetups.com is the place to go. They offer safer alternatives for everyone to drive and full-on esports setups for those of you looking to get sweaty immediately. Go Setups. So we see so many of you purchasing Go Setups through our link on the Discord and in the description of the video. We thank you so much for doing that. With that said, time for an interview. Here is the winner of the race, Benjamin Heilman. He's won a couple of them. He's finished second. But did you see this one coming tonight, Stewie?
Not really, no. Because we looked at the recently published hot lap charts from LFM, and we noticed that all of us, us meaning Chris, me, and Butchek, because we were in a voice, were wildly off pace from the McLarens, and I couldn't really get past him, and then they must have made a big mistake in the pits because he lost 4 seconds or something, and then I guess the slower driver took over, and from there I just had to not get a warning because I was on 3.
Were you ever worried? Ignacy was catching you a little bit. They trimmed the gap by a couple seconds before it stabilized. Were you worried about that, or were you just eyes forward focused?
I think he just pushed at the start of the stint to get the fastest lap, and then his tires just gave up. So I was just still pushing a bit, but being careful because, as I said, I was on 3 warnings for almost the entire second half of the race. So I didn't want to make that mistake.
You were literally sitting on a live hand grenade, is what you're telling me, for the second half of that one. But
Yep.
It must feel good. It's another win. Your third win in the series. You won at Laguna Seca. You won at Silverstone. You've now won at Hungaroring. You're the championship leader going to the final round. You got to give credit to the 67. They've done everything they can to keep it close. They've stolen the quickest lap, which means that they're going to get a few more points. They've certainly taken that off you or any other driver. It's going to be close. What's the strategy going into Spa? What do you think the car's capable of around that joint?
No idea yet. So far we've done the first laps on the day of the race, so I'll see. I just hope the Lambo is quicker than the Mercedes, and do the best I can.
Well, there you go. Stewie, thanks for coming and talking to us. This is the voice of the man that's normally directing the cameras here on RCI. If the stream looks nice, it's probably because of him, but he's also very potent behind the wheel of a race car. Benny, congratulations.
Thanks.
There you have it. Sort of had it all under control, I would say, Austin. It didn't look like that on the racetrack. It looked like everybody was slipping off. 3 warnings for half the race, was still able to manage it. Just incredible job, an immaculate job.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a few inches either way from losing it all, really, isn't it? So, and we were saying that having a mistake in one race you know, has massive implications for the entire championship. So not really the sort of margin that you want to work with, considering, you know, how much is actually at stake.
It's crazy. You get a driver that's won 3 races, and it's still a very tight championship. That's what happens when you have a drop round involved. We'll be back with you next Wednesday for the conclusion of the team championship here at RCI. That will be at Spa-Francorchamps. But before we can get to Wednesday, we have a race on Friday, the continuation of the Friday GT Sprint Championship. Just 2 rounds left to go, and we're going to Watkins Glen this Friday. Fast track, a track that punishes you for getting it wrong. It's going to be a lot of fun there. You're not going to want to miss that. Night Out returns this weekend as well for its penultimate round. It's also in America, but on the opposite coast. Laguna Seca coming at you for Night Out Season 15. The Monday Porsche Cup Championship comes down to the last this Monday as well. Bathurst on tap for the final race, as if that series could get any more difficult. The final round around the mountain. Incredible stuff. You're going to want to see all that. And of course, we'll be back with you on Wednesday for the Wednesday Championship. Folks, on behalf of everybody here in the broadcast booth, I've been Jesse Lee, joined by Austin Devonshire and Tim Peck with Cormac Malloy behind the cameras. Thank them so much for taking Wednesday to do this championship so we can bring it to you. Thank all of you at home as well for being with us. We hope you've enjoyed the broadcast, from the stewards to the admins to the event managers and everybody behind the scenes. Thank you so much for watching today's broadcast. We'll see you next week here for the conclusion. And until next time, have a good night.